Welcome to the Natural Healing Show. Keep it natural with the Natural Healing Show.
Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Zoe Whitehead. Zoe Whitehead is a healer, and you can find out more about Zoe Whitehead and her wonderful work at her website, lunalightworker.co.uk. Welcome, Zoe Whitehead.
Hi, Catherine. Thanks for having me on again.
So we're going to be talking today for our audience about soul purpose. Now, I also talk about soul purpose in my 10th book called Reading the Soul. And it's my experience that when we awaken to the fact that we are a soul and awaken to our own soul purpose, we're just happier. We're more on fire. We have greater life energy. We're more enthusiastic. So Zoe Whitehead, when you talk about soul purpose, what do you mean by soul purpose?
So yeah, lovely question to start off with, Catherine. So this is something that it's something that I really struggled with personally. So it's kind of become part of the work that I do. And for me, my soul purpose is, really connecting with the aspect of myself, my soul aspect that I came here to do. I really fully believe that. It's also something that completely lights me up, and it's the way that I work, it doesn't feel like a kind of 9-to-5 ordinary job. I really flow with it, and I love to kind of help others to connect to there. So for me, it's something that is deeply within us, and we all have a soul purpose. And it's almost like it's our destiny. It's what we're here, like I said, we're here to do. And once we connect with that, like you said, it really kind of lights us up and magnetizes our energy, and we just feel so much more fuller and more purposeful.
Great. Now, Zoe Whitehead, in your professional opinion, how does a person know whether or not they're connected to their soul purpose?
There are lots of ways, and I feel that it's something that kind of unfolds over time, for sure. And for me, in my own personal experience, I definitely noticed a deepening to my intuitive guidance. I felt a deepening with my inner wisdom. I kind of started to know, what sort of aligned actions I needed to take in any given moment. I started to sound different, and I started to see things from a much bigger and wider perspective. And what I mean by that is I could, whatever unfolds, whatever challenges, whatever hardships, I can pretty much see the learning. Once I kind of get over myself, I can see the learning behind everything that kind of unfolds, because we all struggle, right? We all have challenges. And it's like a kind of shifting perspective that occurs within us. Other things that I've seen is that I really have stepped more into my power. I know who I am. I have a much stronger sense of self. And another thing that I've realized as well is that the kind of deep nights of the soul that we all go through, those big challenges when we feel separate, we feel in the void. To me, that feels like growth. That feels expansive. And instead of staying stuck in it, because we all go through those periods, right? But now that I'm more connected to my soul purpose, when someone's connected to their soul purpose, they will be able to transcend and traverse those really difficult times with much more ease and grace. I mean, I'm not saying that I never feel challenged, I never feel pushed, I never feel triggered. And someone who is very connected to their soul purpose will always feel all of those. But what we start to experience, what you will start to experience when you connect more to your soul purpose, is that you you start to move through these challenging times a lot more quickly.
Okay. Now, in my 10th book, Reading the Soul, I talk about my work doing soul readings. So I am a medical intuitive healer, and I do medical intuitive readings. In addition to that, I also read the soul. And when I'm reading the soul, one of the things, the first thing I look at is, where are you in your spiritual evolution? So are you unconscious? Like when we're little kids, when we're there, we know we're alive, but we're not really connected to the fact that we are a soul yet. And then the second stage is where you're awakening, and you're awakening to the fact that you are a soul. And then the third step is where you're conscious, where you know that you're a soul and you're actually connected to your purpose. So what I find, so here we are, we're talking about soul purpose. So when you're unconscious, you don't know what your soul purpose is. You're not necessarily connected to the spiritual aspects of yourself. Now the awakening process for many of us is not necessarily an easy time. And, in my book, Reading the Soul, I talk about what I call a breakdown to a breakthrough. So sometimes in life, we go through periods where maybe you have a severe illness that makes you reconsider your relationship with your body, or you go through a divorce, or you lose a loved one, or you lose a job. So these are these major transitions in life, often unanticipated, not necessarily planned, and not necessarily your favorite thing. Like you didn't want to have a divorce, or you didn't, want to suddenly get this horrible diagnosis, but it forces you to wake up to the bigger picture of who you are. So this awakening process for many of us, where we begin to connect to the spiritual aspects, during that awakening process, as we awaken to the fact that we are a soul, then we can start connecting to this deeper aspect of ourselves, the truer time limitless aspect of who we are. And that's when we really start connecting to our soul purpose. And again, when you're conscious of that, it's like, okay, I know I'm a soul, and I know that my soul is here to accomplish things. Now, another thing that I find, Zoe Whitehead, is when we're connected to our soul purpose, it literally changes our thinking. So when we're unconscious, it's all about me. And people who are always talking about me and I, and using these me, I, all about me words, they don't necessarily have that bigger picture. So when we go through that awakening period, we're like, wait a minute, I may be uncomfortable, but I'm beginning to realize there's this whole other world out here. There's other people, beginning with maybe my family, or my spiritual family, or my community, right? So we're beginning to see that bigger picture. And what I find is that when people are connected to their soul purpose, they're doing all thinking. So they're thinking about their universal connection. And as we do this all thinking, it goes from me, to maybe we, to all. And so when we are in our soul purpose, we're doing bigger picture thinking, and we're more conscious about how the choices that I make have this bigger effect. So for example, I'm going to use something simple. So if I think about my garden, so when I'm in all thinking, I'm like, well, if I keep my garden free of chemicals, then I'm going to protect the birds and the hummingbirds and the bees, and that's going to contribute to the planet. So, Zoe Whitehead, as we connect to our soul purpose, in your professional opinion, how do we change our thinking?
You mean as in how do we purposefully change our thinking, or how does it shift naturally?
How does it naturally? We basically go from thinking it's all about me to wait a minute, I'm part of the whole.
Yeah, it's for me, it's a very slow evolution, and it's something that, like I said, really unfolds within us. We get this kind of just a wider perception of our world and our place in the world. And it's we also become a lot more intentional. That's something that I find. And when clients connect to their purpose, they're a lot more intentional. They feel a lot more connected to the world around them, to nature. They connect with others in a very different way. Often what we find is that obviously our vibration is shifting when we start to connect to, and our light codes open up and we're anchoring in, we're embodying more light, our vibration shifts, doesn't it? And so things that feel out of alignment in terms of relationships and the way that we've viewed the world starts to shift as well, and comes together in a very different way. I mean, there's so many aspects to this, isn't there? And it's just something that we just see will just unfold very, very naturally, very organically for us, so that, like I said, we start to sound different, we start to do things differently, we start to make decisions for the highest good of all, not just ourselves, but also I do feel there's an aspect of us that we hold ourselves in higher consciousness, right? We hold a space for ourselves, but also that means that we can hold a space for others as well. And just lots of shifts and changes that I see within myself, and I see within the people that I work with, and a sensitivity to energy as well, to the lunar cycles, the cosmic cycles, the seasonal cycles. All of this weaves in, and we have this growing sensitivity to energy, so we become naturally more expansive, right? Because we're more connected to what's going on in the cosmos and things like that. So it's just a kind of ever growing, ever expanding way that soul moves. It's very flowy, isn't it, if we allow it to be, and if we can completely surrender to that process. But like you say, we have an ego, we have a personality, and that can sometimes get in the way as well. So for me, it's very much about being very aware, very self-aware of how we're getting impacted in any given moment, how we're getting triggered by others, so that we can really dance with our fears and navigate whatever comes our way.
Now let's bring it back to our audience, the people who are listening. Because many people think that your soul purpose has to be your job. And I want to make a distinction about that, because this is a very common misconception, that it's like, okay, my soul purpose is my profession through which I earn a living. But it's my experience in my 29 years of experience in natural healing, that your soul purpose and your profession, how you earn a living, are actually two separate things. So when you're connected to your soul purpose, you could be the mailman, you could be the CPA. Her accountant's a very spiritual person. And so you could be doing whatever you're doing to earn a living here on earth, and pay the rent and buy groceries and take care of your family and yourself. But at the same time, as you connect to your soul purpose, that soul purpose infuses through and comes in naturally with whatever you're doing. But here's the distinction. What I find is that when we are in our soul purpose, we are quite literally connected to all thinking. We're connected to the universe, God, the fact that we are part of this larger whole. We are experiencing oneness, and we're connected to that. And because we're connected to that, as we do our work, as we're the accountant or the mailman or the Amazon delivery person, we're connecting to our part in the whole and how our contributions affect everyone around us. And a really good way to explain this is that you become more responsible for the energy that you show up with. And so when I'm more conscious of the energy that I bring as not just a medical intuitive healer, but whatever profession that I do, then all the self-care that I do, all the ways that I take care of myself, my prayer, my meditation, my yoga, my eating well, that allows me and empowers me to show up as my best self so that I can contribute the best energy to whatever I do, and then thereby uplift others. So with that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors. And we're going to be right back with Zoe Whitehead, healer at lunalightworker.co.uk.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So Zoe Whitehead, I think many people are under the misperception that when they connect to their soul purpose, that they have to be doing something in the spiritual arena, whether they're a healer or a teacher or, a meditation leader. What is your experience about this question?
Yeah, I mean, you're so right, and that it doesn't have to be part of what we do as what I like to call our earth job. Absolutely not. We like you say, we do have to have financial stability. Of course we do. I do know people who are absolutely working through their soul purpose, and that's that they're earning in that way, which is beautiful. But to me, you just perfectly described the light worker, someone who feels their light, is sensitive to their energy blueprint, how that's impacting on others, and they can bring that into the workspace, and they can bring that into the way that they live their life. And this is, for me, so significant, because light workers and people that are in tune with their soul purpose are needed everywhere, because they're holding that template, right? Their vibration is raised, their frequency is raised, so they're more naturally able to hold a beautiful space for others, and also be that leading and shining example for others of what it is to be more sovereign and intuitive and purpose-led in the way they lead their lives. And I feel that when we're more connected to soul, to our soul purpose, we have these gifts, don't we, that start to come through. But like you so beautifully said, it doesn't mean that they need to be working in them. It could just mean that not just mean, that they're exceptionally gifted at bringing community together. For example, they may not necessarily get paid for that, but that absolutely lights them up, and they have a gift around that. Or they could be a homemaker, really make these beautifully visually pleasing homes, and that is their gift, and they just know how to do that instinctively. But like you say, some of us could be working as healers and spiritual teachers and leaders in the spiritual community as well. So that's my personal experience and my experience around it, and that's what I've seen through people that I work with, and through my own personal ways of living.
Yes. And again, I think that one of the ways that that you're in your spiritual purpose is you're conscious about how your work affects others and how your very presence affects others. Right? So when I walk in a room, am I uplifting everyone around me? Right? Now, often when I'm working with clients to help them connect to their spiritual purpose, one of the things I actually look at is the challenges they've faced. So I'm going to give an example. So for example, on this radio show, on the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, I've interviewed a gentleman who earlier in his life was a terrible drug addict. And he faced incredible, years of challenges as an addict, and really put not only himself and his body, but also his family through incredible pain and suffering. Well, praise God, he's moved through that. And now he is someone who coaches people and helps them through their addictions. So here's my point. Had he not gone through those particular personal challenges himself, he would not be able to be the addiction counselor that he is. So he's walked that path. Myself, as a healer, I've had so many illnesses, I can't even count. I've even said to God at a certain point years ago, it's like, okay, I promise I'll look it up in a book. I don't have to have every illness known to man. But because I've gone through my own health challenges and walked through that path, I don't just know about something. I haven't just read about it in a book. I understand how to heal so many challenges, physical, energetic, and emotional. And that's why I'm able to write books about it. So Zoe Whitehead, what is your observation? How do the particular challenges that we personally face, the unique challenges to us, often point us toward our unique purpose?
Yeah, I mean, you're so right, Catherine, that, they give us clues, what we struggle with, what we really find so challenging is often linked to our core wounding and consequently our soul purpose. It's something that we have to go through. We all have a purpose, that I know without a doubt. But it's about reclaiming that wisdom, isn't it? It's, I feel we've had many past lives doing the things that we're rediscovering in this lifetime. But it's so buried sometimes deep within us. There's a lot of fear around it, being, a lot of fear from stepping into it. And often these come out as challenges, don't they? The biggest, hardest challenges that we may face. But so that gives us clues as to what our purpose, in what direction our purpose may lie. But like you so rightly said, like the guy that you interviewed, he understands how difficult it is to overcome addiction. It's like you said, it's not a theoretical thing. He's actually lived that. And so I'd much prefer, for example, if that was my case, to be with someone, coached by someone or supported by someone who, understood the challenges because they've been through it, rather than someone who's just learned and trained in that, of course. So, my own personal experience, I know that this is part of the work that I do, because my awakening was so slow. It was like a snail's pace. I mean, I would probably say that, to be fully activated in my purpose, it probably took a good 12 years, if I'm really honest. There was so much fear around stepping into that and embodying that, and such an inability for me to own what I was meant to be doing, that I really struggled with that. And I knew that was part of the work that I'm bringing out today, and part of my purpose that I'm now magnetizing and helping others with.
Yes, and here we are at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. So obviously our audience is interested in natural healing. I'm going to give some other examples. Another gentleman who we've interviewed here on the Natural Healing Show was born blind. And now in his 60s, he has an unrestricted driver's license and teaches people natural vision improvement. So if you're listening to this broadcast and you're really making an effort to try and connect to, like, why am I here? What is my soul here to do? Look at what are the really hard things that you've had to walk through, right? I personally published 2 books, not one, but 2 books about how to heal depression naturally. I've helped more people get off antidepressants than I can even count. But it's not, as I say, it's not just a matter of throwing your drugs in the toilet or substituting your pharmaceutical drugs for something else. It's about really figuring out, what do you need in order to be happy? What do you need in order to be healthy and happy? So if you're listening, look through your current life challenges, right? And they're going to give you specific clues, because often the challenges that we have, they're your life school experience, okay, that empower you and strengthen you and motivate you so that you can share that wisdom to others. I'm going to give another example, because we're talking a lot about people who end up being healers, but there are other people who are artists and you musicians. And as you said, maybe they've had many past lives doing that. I know I've had many past lives as a medical intuitive and as a healer. But the musicians and the artists, part of what they do is they literally, quite literally, show us the beauty of the world. And they uplift our soul by creating beauty, whether it's a beautiful home or a beautiful garden or a beautiful painting or a beautiful piece of music. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And it's for me, we all have a creative outlet, and it's part, for me, it's part of the soul aspect, is connecting to that. And we channel, don't we, Catherine? We're channeling when I mean, I'm not an artist, but I love to write. So that's another way in that I channel that content. I'm connected to soul when I do that. And there are lots of people that do that in maybe flower arranging or sensing energy, or just, knowing what colors go together. It's that soul aspect, that creativity that we all have within us.
So Zoe Whitehead, when you're working with people to help them connect with their soul purpose, how do you empower people to start connecting to what their soul is here to do?
So I work at 3 levels. So the first one is very much the shadow aspects. We take a deep dive into core wounding. So it's the Chiron wounding. We really look at identifying how that unfolds for us. And we look to any sort of childhood trauma, any past life trauma as well. And I do that through energy work. And, for me, it's very much about enabling the client to see what's really holding them back, because we can, as you know, we have so many patternings and erroneous self-beliefs and things that really hold us back and keep us small. And these are often all wrapped up in our core woundings and traumas and things like that. So we spend a good amount of time looking at those things. And then what we start to do then is we bring in what I like to call goddess practices. So it's all the inner work, the inner daily practice, which I feel is really important. It's not really about what you've done this week. It's really what you've done today, every day, that regular. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of time, even just 5 minutes. In my experience, is good, because you're learning to connect within, you're learning to be in that inner world, and just really start to connect with your higher self, connect with soul, get to know who you truly are. And also the stilling. For me, stilling and grounding is so important, because if we're always so busy and in our doing, we're not connecting in, we're not hearing those soul whispers, and we're not getting that intuitive guidance. So it's all of these practices and clearings and releasings that we do, that weave together, and then slowly, you know, the soul purpose starts to come through and anchor through. And yeah, and that for me is how we get to there.
So we've talked, Zoe Whitehead, you and I have talked about how one of the ways that a person can start to connect to their purpose is look at what are the unique challenges that you've had, whether you were, so for example, being born blind or suffering from years of addiction, right? But in addition to that, in my work, part of what I empower people to do is I empower you to connect to your, what I call your superpowers, right? So what are your superpowers? So you're a human being, but at the same time, you are a soul. And as a soul, you're going to have unique talents and unique gifts that, you know, are just come easily to you, to which you're genius level. So I remember I'm about to be 64 this month, but I remember in my late 40s, somebody saying to me, Catherine, you're very good at many things, but your gifts as a medical intuitive healer cannot be taught or learned. So part of what I do is I empower you to connect to your superpowers. And again, these are going to be qualities of your soul that, you know, you can just roll out of bed and just hold that energy and be and do. And they generally don't require a lot of effort on your part. So for example, it's not exhausting to me to use my intuition. You can wake me up. I've done medical intuitive readings in the middle of the night. I mean, not that that's my favorite time to do it, but in other words, that gift doesn't turn off, right? So as we connect to our superpowers, then that's going to give us a clue. And another clue I think that helps us connect to our purpose is the impact that each of us has on other people. Because we have the impact each of us has on others. Because as I mentioned, when we're really in our soul purpose, we're not in our all about me, we're in the awareness of all, and the awareness of how my unique vibration contributes to this greater good. So when I'm aware of how my energy impacts others, then I can begin to dial into, and this is what I do with my clients, how is my energy impacting others? And that is going to give you a clue. I'm going to give another example. So I have a client, and she's actually in her 80s at this point. I've worked with her for many years. And she is the mother of 4 boys. And one of them was hit by a drunk driver and had severe traumatic brain injury. And so even though she never became a healer herself, she had to quite literally hold the family together and support her son. And so there again, it's like, her big picture thinking was her family. And so there again, if you're listening to this, you may think, oh, I'm just a homemaker. Well, your impact in holding the space for a beautiful home, for a peaceful home, for a place where others can, you know, grow to be the people they're meant to be, this can be quite profound. Another example, I remember years ago, I worked with a woman who had Lou Gehrig's disease. And at that point that I started working with her, she was unable to speak. And I was really the perfect person to work with her because I could read her energy and I could mirror to her, well, today you're feeling whatever. If she went to a regular therapist, she would just sit there and cry. And I remember looking at, and this is quite interesting because we're talking about soul purpose. So when I looked at why did this beautiful, intelligent woman get Lou Gehrig's disease? Like, what was the purpose behind her severe illness? It was so that the work of God could be made known to man. And all of her children were brilliant people. They'd all gone to Harvard and Yale, and she was an Ivy League person, and very, very intelligent people. But their mother's illness brought absolutely everybody in the family to their knees. And they all had to come together. They all had to work together as a family to support their mother as she worked her way through this incredibly challenging illness. So there again, sometimes we can find our purpose also in our illness. But again, part of her superpower was she brought out so much love and respect from everybody in their family, and she helped others awaken to this bigger picture.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, isn't it? I love hearing about stories like that, so inspiring and uplifting. And you know, you're absolutely right. Again, it's those big challenges, often life challenges, and often health as well. It's almost like that final frontier, isn't it? If the divorce and the losing the job and, you know, whatever is not going to push you, it's often health, isn't it? You know, when you get to that point. I mean, personally, I almost lost the sight in one eye. I had a really bad back of the eye infection very close to the optic nerve, and it was just while I lost my mother as well. So it was like a really, really intense time. But what came out of that was that I really became so much more autonomous, and I was also always someone who was very emotionally overwhelmed and just didn't really know who I was, didn't have a sense of purpose, and I had to go to the consultants, and, you know, I got the diagnosis, but then I said, well, actually, I'm not going to take the steroids that you're giving me. I want to do this naturally. And I had a lot of people in my family that were against it because they felt I was going to lose my sight. And that's what the consultant told me. And I healed it. It healed. And, you know, it's from those places where you're just brought to your knees. To me, that was really traumatic because obviously I was grieving as well. But it really brought me forwards in so many ways and really helped me to discover where I needed to be and how I needed to help others discover themselves, including their purpose. So yeah, absolutely. Health challenges can be really scary, but there's always a learning at the other side. There's always something at the other side for us.
And with that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our sponsors here at UK Health Radio. You're listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, and we'll be right back with Zoe Whitehead.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So Zoe Whitehead, healer at lunalightworker.co.uk. What I find in my work as a medical intuitive healer is that one of the important reasons to discover our soul purpose is because it's going to empower you to be healthier and happier. And let me explain from my perspective why that's the case. So we have to understand that your soul controls your mind, right? Your mind controls your emotions controls your energy and your energy systems, and your energy system controls your physical body. So when we are on fire, when we're empowered, when we're motivated for our spiritual purpose, we're in this high vibration state, and that's going to literally light up every other aspect of ourselves. In addition to that, it's my experience that there's 3 ways to be happy in life. The first way to be happy in life is physical pleasure. So this could be eating yummy food, moving our body in comfortable ways. Second way to be happy is what's called your spirit, soul satisfaction. So what's soul satisfying for one person may be watching football on a Sunday afternoon with their buddies. With someone else, it could be walking in nature. So looking at, ways that you're really nurturing your soul. But the final way to be happy is with life meaning. And when you really connect to the meaning of your life, which is what the soul purpose is going to give you, it's going to give you incredible, indomitable strength and incredible motivation to overcome the challenges that you face, because it's going to make those challenges have meaning and purpose. So, Zoe Whitehead, what is your experience? How can discovering our soul purpose empower us to be healthier and happier?
I love that question. So for me, and in my experience, I found that what's really come through for me has been this sense of self, this really defining sense of self, because this is something that I very much struggled with personally. And from that, we have all these beautiful things that start to emerge, like really deeply trusting who we are. So we start to take these aligned decisions and actions aligned to soul. So really, like you say, starting to nurture ourselves, knowing instinctively what is filling our cup. And sort of, for me, being a lot more intentional as well in everything that I do. For me, when we're connected, we start to slow down, we start to ground, we start to still. And what we do is very purpose-led and very activating for us and inspiring for us. There's never one thing. It kind of all weaves in together, but it's like you said, it is also about doing the things that light you up. And I'm a big believer in feeding ourselves first, so that we can then hold this beautiful space and have this kind of more elevated energy in order to serve others through our light, through our energy. And I feel that these are the things that have been the biggest difference for me since I've really started to connect with soul, with purpose, and be a lot more purpose-led in my life. I also feel that I'm a lot more sovereign. People that are connected to the soul purpose, they tend to kind of flow with life. I mean, not always, because we always have our challenges and triggers, obviously, and karmic situations that play out, and this can really take us out of our energy. But the more connected we are, and the more inclined we are to go within, and we have this kind of blossoming sense of self, we really start to navigate those storms with a lot more ease and grace than before. And like we've said before, we see the higher learnings behind all of those, so we can come back to that sense of stillness and balance, which will give us that sense of happiness. Obviously, if we really know who we are and we have this keen sense of self, we'll naturally and organically be doing things that light us up anyway. And we get this uniqueness, this unique sense of self, this unique self-expression. We dare to be different, and that feels so gratifying. It really does, because we're empowered in who we are. And I mean, obviously we get peppered with self-doubt, we all do, but it's not so longer lasting, because who we are is really starting to develop and grow within us.
So I was speaking with one of my clients in London just recently, And we were talking for him about his soul purpose. And basically, I think one of the reasons that connecting to our soul purpose makes us happier is it helps us to be more discerning about which choices lead us into the light. So when you're in your soul purpose, you can be more discerning. It's like, I don't need to be with those people. I can let go of these dramas. I don't need all this drama. I don't need this darkness. I don't need the darkness. I don't need the dramas. I don't need these situations that are going to simply drag down my energy, because my purpose is important. And as you connect to that purpose, you're going to be led into the light, and you're going to be happier and happier. Now, Zoe Whitehead, how can embracing our soul purpose give us strength to face our personal challenges more easily?
I would then again say that we have this stronger sense of self and who we are. We're a lot more intuitive. We are connected. We're a lot more connected to that intuitive guidance. So we can start. What I found personally is that in the moment, I'm able to express intuitively. And so, again, all of these things weave together to kind of really strengthen ourselves, and we start to see our place in the world and who we're meant to be and what we're meant to be doing. And just the fact that we can be of service to others is such a beautiful thing. I mean, if we're light workers and we're empaths, we're going to have that deep, deep desire to be of service to others. And not, like we said, it's not necessarily through a job that you do, not through your earth job necessarily, but you can bring light to situations. You're more naturally philosophical, so you can really help others to start to see things from a different perspective. And I feel that when we're of service through our light and through our gifts and our purpose, it's so gratifying. I mean, it's not, we don't do it because we know we're going to get a hit from it, but we just naturally want to serve others, don't we, through our light gifts. So it's and all of this, will in turn just keep us connected, keep us strengthened, and so it goes on, and we start to expand outwards and grow.
So one of the reasons I feel that connecting to our soul purpose gives us strength is that it helps us embrace our embodiment. So what do I mean by that? So many people are walking around and they're not suicidal. That's too strong, but they're not really sure why they're here. They don't really think that they're all that important. They haven't really truly embraced the impact that they have, or the reason that you are blessed with a body in this lifetime. In my book, Reading the Soul, I talk about how many of us have tried multiple lifetimes in order to be incarnated in a body. So when we embrace our soul purpose, we accept this body in this lifetime, however imperfect this body may be, okay? Or however imperfect we may perceive this body to be. And when you embrace this body in this lifetime, it helps you to be grounded to the earth and also connected to the divine at the same time. And when you're grounded and connected to your soul purpose at the same time, you are invincible. So with that, Zoe Whitehead, healer at lunalightworker.com. Any final thoughts for our audience as we conclude?
For me, I would definitely recommend that you trust in these processes, that we have cycles that we all go through, death, rebirth, releasing whatever needs to be released, and just trusting in that process that more light is going to come to you, and be open to receive and open to the shifts and the changes that you need to make in order to deepen your connection to your soul purpose, remembering that we all have one.
You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally Our guest today has been the one and only Zoe Whitehead, healer at lunalightworker.co.uk. And remember, when you connect to your spiritual purpose, your soul purpose, you accept your incarnation in this body, in this lifetime, you discover your superpowers, and your energy increases naturally. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Natural Healing Show. Keep it natural with the Natural Healing Show.